Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
He is Dr. Crow from Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine for our Inside the Training Room this morning. Staying dry this morning, Austin?
I'm indoors, so yes, I am.
That boy. Hey, I want to lead off with Robert Gasser, who we talked about last week, but now we know what he's going to do after a third opinion. He is going to have surgery on that elbow. Now, they're saying 12 months. They're kind of saying 12 months right now, but they'll know more once they, lack for a better phrase, get in there and kind of open it up from what I was reading. So, I mean, is that still a typical recovery time? Even if he didn't tear the UCL, but he's still having surgery, it's a similar recovery time with that?
It depends. So if they're looking at doing a full, Tommy John reconstruction, a year is pretty accurate. Like we've talked about in the past, there has been that newer kind of augmented repair where they do the internal brace with it, and they have been able to safely accelerate the timeline. Now, there's a bit of a varying opinions on that, and that's certainly why you get opinions from more than one doctor, because there's different people who think different about different injuries and how you approach it. But if they think it's intact enough to just do the repair, I bet it'll be faster than that. If they feel like they have to do a full reconstruction, then I think a year is a pretty accurate guess.
Oh, man. So, I mean, if we're talking year, I mean, we might not. That doesn't mean he's going to pitch right away June from now either, because you got the rehab process after that, right?
Well, generally that builds up to it. So that's the goal for like full go pitching. I mean, there is a very slow and meticulous throwing program we put UCL injuries through. I mean, it starts with simply 5 throws on flat level from 5 feet away, and then as time goes, you build up distance, velocity, throwing from a mound, all that stuff. So it is a very, very structured return with the goal of, hard throwing off the mound. I think a year would be back to pitching, but then there's also, as we all know, there's game, being in shape for a game versus just regular stuff. So to get back to that A form, that will be a little bit longer than that too. So yeah, it's not an ideal situation, but there's plenty of guys who have bounced back and had great careers after this, so it's not a death sentence, but it's going to be a pretty big speed bump. There's no question there.
For the Dodgers, a couple of big injuries. Let's start with Mookie Betts. He fractured his hand after getting hit in it 6 to 8 weeks with a fractured hand. Now, there's a lot of bones in that hand, right? That might be kind of hard to figure out which ones he could have broke, I would imagine.
Yeah, most of the time when you get hit, it's one of your metacarpals. So those are the bones that extend just off the carpus, which are the small wrist bones, and they go to make the initial set of knuckles on your wrist. We call the MCP. By far the most commonly fractured. Now, if it's down in the finger, then it's going to be one of the phalanx, but then usually they'll say broken finger, not broken hand. Hand is almost universally one of the metacarpals. Now, the question is, did he break one or break two? Did it require surgery? I don't think they said he had surgery, did they? I can't remember.
I'll have to double check. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I didn't see them mention surgery, so it'd be non-operative. Which I'd say that's a realistic timeline. Maybe a little bit quicker if it heals well, but they'll certainly keep their eyes on that one.
And also, they have a pitcher, Yamamoto, who has a strained rotator cuff. Now, when it comes to a pitcher and a strained rotator cuff, I got to imagine that's probably a little bit more trickier than say, a position player, perhaps?
Well, yeah, certainly just with the velocities that they're throwing with, no question about it. And we've touched on this in the past couple times, but, you always have to be concerned that that's maybe the tip of the iceberg, that there's some other process going on in the shoulder when they come in. So whenever you see a pitcher come in with shoulder and elbow pain, you're always worried for the worst news. You're like, all right, this could be something real serious. And sometimes it's not, but sometimes you have these signs where a pitcher's having an issue with either the shoulder or the elbow, and it's reflective of a bigger problem that's going on. So if it is simply rotator cuff, tendonitis or sprain, then yeah, he hopefully is going to get back relatively soon. But you just have to worry about that coming back. And then in addition, it's not uncommon for them, if they get back and they try to compensate, that all of a sudden a shoulder issue becomes an elbow issue because they're transferring forces to another part of the arm when they're trying to throw hard. So that's why they really treat pitchers with kid gloves, because it's a fickle beast to be able to throw a ball, 90 plus miles an hour The human body is really not made to do that very well. So
right.
That's why we see so many issues with these shoulders and elbows.
I want to go back to Tommy John here, because we've talked a lot about ACL, and we've talked a lot about how that recovery time and it's changed and the procedure. Has Tommy John surgery over the years adapted or changed, or has it been pretty consistent, or has there been any new, like, how do I want to phrase this, new ways of doing it or rehabbing?
Yeah, techniques. There have been changes. The original techniques for reconstruction were slightly modified, but the standard one is what's called the docking technique. It's basically just weave a tendon through the elbow. And it's been around for a long time, and it's worked very well. It has a high success rate, which is why it's been pretty tried and true. The biggest advancement recently has been the addition of that internal brace, which basically augments the repair or the reconstruction, or you can do it isolated as a repair depending on what you feel the UCL quality is. So it is one of the unique ligaments. For ACL, for example, generally it's either fully torn or it's not. The UCL is funny because you get these partial tears that act like a full tear. And so that's the situation where there's been more and more research on, can we repair these as opposed to reconstruct? So as the name implies, a reconstruction, you remove it and fully reconstruct it. A repair, you actually leave stuff there and try to get it to heal. And so if it is able to be, quote, repaired, then we think is going to be a faster recovery. And it's always ideal to keep your own structures if possible, but that is an area of significant debate and research going on right now. But if there has been one advancement, it's certainly been the addition of the internal brace and the UCL repair versus a full reconstruction.
Now, with that brace, is that similar to like the Achilles brace sort of thing?
Made by the same company, so
okay.
they pan the name the same. So yeah, so it's basically anchors with strong sutures in them that back up a repair. So yeah, there's a company called Arthrex, and they have a number of those braces for different parts of they have a knee, elbow, shoulder, ankle. They have all sorts of them that they have. It's basically a way to kind of back up or augment your repairs and reconstruction.
So this might be a really stupid question, so get ready. But like when we talk about like advancements and surgeries like ACLs or Tommy Johns and all that, how do people like you, like, how do doctors practice that, or how do they come up? I got to imagine, you got to practice. Is it cadavers or what's the process like that go through?
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. So sometimes there's subtle changes to techniques, which people will try, just on their own patients and say like, all right, there's a newer technique, I'm going to try it. If it's totally novel, generally people start from scratch and do basically basic science or biomechanical studies. So they can start on cadavers. They can start sometimes on animal models to see how things respond. Sometimes they'll do, synthetic things where you just test the biomechanical strength. So there's a lot of different ways to go about it. And then ultimately you want to try to compare it to what the gold standard is. So most injuries out there have a kind of a standard technique where it's like, this is what you're going to compare things to. So if you're going to try, let's say, create a whole new way to do an ACL reconstruction, you need to compare it to the standard of like a hamstring or BTB or quad graft that have been around for a long time, tried and true, have a lot of studies that have been shown the efficacy. And you're going to come up with a new technique. But that is an interesting question, is how do you come up with an entirely novel new way to do it? And there is, sometimes in orthopedics, there's been, advancements that turn out not to be advancements at all, where it seemed like it was a great idea. And then 5-10 years later, we look back and say, wow, that didn't work out. And, then the patients who had that procedure just didn't have as good of an outcome. So, when I was in residency, I had one of my and if it's proven, don't be the last one to adapt it. Make sure that you're staying up on the times. And so there's a lot of ways that we do that. There's journals that we read. There's conferences we go to. There's videos people put out. And we try to make sure we're keeping on the cutting edge because, like I said, you want to provide the best care. But there is that fine line you walk because, like a lot of things, there's new toys that come out and you don't always have to have the new shiny toy. You want to make sure that you're doing the right thing for your patient.
So I got one more weird question. This comes from my kid Hudson, though. Okay, so let me start this off by saying, have you seen the movie Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, of course.
He wants to know, is that possible? What Harry Rowan-Gardner did with his with the tight tendons and all that?
Yeah, let's get Hudson into clinic. I'll cast him up. We'll see if it works. I got to say no. That doesn't. Well, stiffness, yes. The problem is it doesn't create like a spring-loaded arm. But when we immobilize joints, they do get stiff. The problem is it creates dysfunction, not extraordinary function. So it is unlikely to pan out in real life, unfortunately.
All right, I will let him know. So he's been binge watching that twice the last couple of days.
Classic.
Right now. I know,
Classic.
right? So, hey, before I let you go though, this morning, I was reading in the news about the new CV co-op. Could you fill us in a little bit about that?
Yeah. So basically, it's a collaborative effort between community leaders and several of the Oak Leaf Medical Network physicians, so the independent physicians in the community. Essentially, we're trying to build a locally governed hospital that's going to be a community-based hospital. So everything is going to be local. It's going to be local independent physicians. It's going to be run by local community leaders who have a vested interest in our community. So that's really, I guess, for lack of a better term, a grassroots movement that we're trying to get and develop. As we know, the closure of the HSHS hospitals, so St. Joe's and Sacred Heart, have created a void in the area. And certainly the other hospitals are doing their parts, but at the end of the day, we need to have a hospital in this community that services the independent physicians and that allows us to bring care to our patients. And I mean, patients need it. It's going to be good for a lot of different reasons. And our goal is really to provide absolutely the best care at very reasonable prices. And we all know the cost of healthcare in the Chippewa Valley has gone up through the years, and we are an area that is high. So that's one of our goals, is to really provide excellent care at an affordable rate and keep our care here, because there are people who are having to leave the Chippewa Valley to get their medical care, and that's just something I don't think is right. I think that we're doing our best to try to push forward, and it's not going to be something that we can snap our fingers and build a hospital overnight, but it's a concerted effort, and we're really starting to get some momentum going, and there's a lot of physicians and community leaders working on it. So we're excited about it, and it's going to be an ongoing process, and we'll try to keep the community updated on it. But I think there are some internet resources based on that can give updates. Maybe next time I can give you that. I don't have it off the top of my head, but we want to keep people involved and up to date. But it's a big goal, but it's certainly something we think we're going to be able to achieve and really take a positive step forward for healthcare in the Chippewa Valley. Awesome
stuff. Thank you so much for all that and for all you do, but man, and thank you for always hopping on Friday morning with us, buddy. But I'm afraid I'm gonna have to give Hudson the bad news. I don't know if he was planning on breaking his arm so he could do that or what, but he was just like, is that possible, Dad? I'm like, I'll ask Dr. Crow tomorrow. So
yeah, I would hold off on jumping off the high edge, see if he can break his arm. That doesn't work out.
I don't want to go through that either. So
no, you don't.
Dr. Crow, thanks as always, buddy. Have a fantastic weekend, and we will catch up with you again soon. Okay, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. Have yourself a great weekend. Yeah, we're going to celebrate my youngest's seventh birthday today, so we got a little party over at our house.
Happy birthday, man. Well, tell him I got to see him back on the golf course, okay?
That's right. Absolutely. We'll get back out there.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Yep.
There you go. Dr. Crow inside the training room, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.